pre-departure orientation for summer and fall 2021. If I didn't say it already, because I honestly don't remember if I did, my name is Sarah Kidwell, and I am one of the Education Abroad advisors here at UA. I advise for all colleges except for Arts and Sciences and Business. We have our Arts and Sciences advisor here as well, who will be managing the chat. If you have any questions during the session and you are on via Zoom, just drop it in the chat. Raise your hand if we don't get to you after an extended period of time, though, just in case we miss it. All right, the first thing I'm going to talk about is our UA Global and Cultural Perspectives minor. We are not, I'll let her respond to that chat. You want to respond to that chat? Chat's being shared. Well, I'll let you respond there. I'll kind of off screen. It's kind of being shared with everybody, even though it's a direct message. I'll let you fix that. Anyway, so the UA Global and Cultural Perspectives minor is designed to introduce undergraduate students to global cultural, economic, physical, and political aspects of being a world citizen in the 21st century. A lot of our students who study abroad also take the classes that are a part of the minor. So sometimes I call this the accidental minor. It's a minor that students just accidentally get before they graduate because they're just interested in the courses that this minor offers when they study abroad. It's just having something in common. So definitely check it out. See if it's a good minor for you, if it's something you're interested in. It's a really flexible minor compared to other minors, and it's only a 15-hour minor. So it's pretty easy minor to get during your undergraduate time. And you might have already taken anywhere from 6 to 9 hours worth of courses that are a part of the minor, and they might just be double counting. So definitely check it out. See if it's a good minor for you. If you're interested, email Dr. Kent, and she can give you some more information about the minor. As for Fulbright and Peace Corps, I'm pretty sure those are also included in the handout. Well, if you're virtual, you'll receive by email. We have advisors for both Fulbright and Peace Corps. Fulbright is a scholarship opportunity for postgraduate students here at UA interested in doing research or teaching English abroad. So if you're interested in any of that, please come speak to our Fulbright advisors. They'd be more than happy to talk to you. And it is a full scholarship for research or teaching English abroad. The Peace Corps is a little different. The Peace Corps, you apply for and interview for a specific Peace Corps position in a specific location. We also have a Peace Corps advisor for that who did Peace Corps for 6 years, if I do recall correctly. So she can tell you all about the Peace Corps and different opportunities that offers. All right, here's some information about our Education Abroad office. We are located in 144 BB Comer Hall. If you don't know where that is, it is catty corner from the Ferguson Center and the Quad. So you can find us on maps. All of our information is listed here. The most important information is probably going to be about Carolina Robinson, our director, or Chad Berry, our associate director. If you get an email from either of them, make sure to respond to it ASAP, and Chad will be talking about that later on. But you could receive emails from any one of these people, so just keep that in mind when you are checking your email. It could be from any one of us telling you to register for a course or make sure you're doing the appropriate forms you need to be doing for study abroad. All right, the orientation agenda is as follows. We'll start out with a session on health and safety ran by our Associate Director, Chad Berry. We'll go on to academics as well as planning and logistics, follow up with culture shock and identity, and then how to get involved with education abroad.
Hello, everyone. My name is Chad Berry. I'm Associate Director for International Health, Safety, and Risk Management here at UA. And so I'm going to be talking to you about a number of health and safety items today, so please pay attention. It's really important information. I'm going to be talking about kind of our risk and crisis response protocols and procedures, as well as some of our insurance and how to use that. So hopefully this will be useful for you. So first thing to mention is this is a U.S. State Department worldwide caution that has been in effect for several years now. And that states that there is a continuing threat of terrorist actions, political upheaval, and violence against U.S. citizens and interests abroad. The likelihood of something happening in your location along these lines is very, very low. But obviously, if it did, then the impact could be very high. So we do want you to be aware of this worldwide caution and have that on your radar. As the advice there says, being just kind of vigilant of where you are and your surroundings, monitoring any news sources, the media, where you are locally, staying in touch with family and friends, registering in STEP. This is the Smart Traveler Enrollment Program. This is another U.S. State Department program. I'll talk more about that in a few minutes. And then have an emergency action plan ready. So those of you in the room have a copy of your Study Abroad Student Handbook with you. And on page 51, there is an emergency action plan. Those of you online, you'll get a PDF of the Student Handbook, and you can refer to the emergency action plan there on page 51. But the emergency action plan has a number of things that you need to look at and kind of figure out before you go. And it basically is the numbers, for example, the local 911 number, the equivalent of 911 in the country you're going to. What is that? Write it down in that book. What is the number of the nearest hospital, the nearest police station, the nearest U.S. embassy? Go ahead and find out that information, input it on that page, and you'll have it ready to go should you ever need it in case of an emergency. You would not have to figure that out kind of in the heat of the moment when everything is kind of maybe chaotic and crazy. You could just turn to that page, or maybe you take a picture of that page of your phone. You can refer to it easily. So thinking ahead, planning ahead will be the best course of action as far as that goes. In regards to education abroad and our communication protocol, Sarah just mentioned, if you hear from Carolina Robinson, our director, or myself in regards to an emergency situation, please do open that email and please respond in whatever way we have requested. So basically, we would probably contact you one of a few ways. So first of all, if something were to happen in or near the location where you're studying abroad, something that might affect a large number of people, and it could be a natural disaster, it could be a terrorist attack, it could be any number of things. Last spring, of course, it was COVID-19. But we'll send an email to your U8 email address. So make sure you continue to check your U8 email address frequently while you are abroad. And if we do email something, it might be something like, please respond to this email and let us know if you're okay or if you need assistance. And so when you get the email, please respond as soon as you can. And if you're okay, you don't have to write a novel, just say, I'm okay. And that's all we need to know. We'll kind of mark you as safe and okay. We also already talked about the Bama Abroad Facebook group. So please sign up for that. We might send out notifications or messages through that group. And we could use the check-in function to make sure everybody's okay. And then a third way that we might contact you is via the International SOS Assistance app. International SOS is our international travel assistance provider, and they also help facilitate our insurance, the insurance coverage that you will have as a UA student abroad. So please download their assistance app. I'm going to talk more about that in a minute. But we also can push out notifications through that app, and you just click a button saying I'm okay, or I need assistance, or whatever the response might be. So that is our emergency protocol. Please, if you do get a message from us, respond right away. These are some emergency contact numbers, and I've mentioned just now International SOS. They are 24/7 on-call assistance wherever you are in the world. You can call that number right there. That is a US number. But also, if you have the app, you can just press the button and it connects you to the nearest international SOS center around the world. So we would recommend using the app to call people, or to call SOS if you need assistance while you are abroad. Here at UA, if you need assistance and you have some kind of emergency, you could call the Education Abroad office during business hours. Our number is there, 205-348-5256. If it is after business hours here at UA, then you would call the UAPD, and they know who to contact and kind of the procedures from that. And then, you also, there's my cell phone and Carolina's cell phone number as well. If there is an emergency situation and we need to get a hold of one of us, then you can contact us at that number. We're also on WhatsApp as another kind of common messaging app you could use to get in touch. And of course, once again, know whatever the local emergency number is where you are going to. It's probably not 911 as it is here in the US. So know what those numbers are where you're going so you can get help if needed. All right. We have all, of course, been hugely impacted by COVID-19 over the last year plus. And these are some of the latest numbers, of course, millions of cases worldwide, millions of cases here in the US. But we are going to talk a few slides about COVID-19 and how it could impact your program, whether it's this summer or in the fall. And so we want to go over a few things on this topic. First of all, you should know UA consults a number of different resources and sources of information. So whether it be the CDC, the US Department of State, the World Health Organization, International SOS, who I've talked about some already, and others regarding study abroad and international travel for UA students, faculty, and staff. So we are kind of looking at a variety of sources of information so we can make informed decisions and give you the best advice that we can. We do have a kind of FAQ webpage that we try to keep updated pretty frequently. So definitely check out those FAQs. There are questions on there about, academics. There are questions on there about health and safety, about registration, about a number of different things, some of which we will talk about today as well, but make sure you check that out. And then also in your study abroad application, there are 2 documents that you need to read and sign that you read. One is called the COVID-19 info or information, and then another one is COVID-19 international travel acknowledgement. So make sure that you have read those and signed those in your application. The COVID-19 info does have a lot of links and resources that could be useful for you regarding COVID-19 in your location. All right, so some precautions, symptoms. We probably, to be honest, especially in the precautions and the symptoms, you might be very familiar with these already. We've been hearing these a lot over the last year, of course, but do continue to take these precautions while you are abroad. And also be mindful of any kind of local precautions that they are asking people to take, whether that's certain kinds of social distancing in certain locations or other precautions. Be aware of what those are. And then if you do develop any of these symptoms here, then contact a medical provider. And you can do that via International SOS as well, so that you can get tested and get the treatment that you might need. There's a variety of other links here. The US State Department, the CDC, Johns Hopkins, that map you may have seen. There's a couple links here for entry requirements and restrictions. So those are a couple of websites that try to stay pretty up to date on what is required to enter that country. Of course, the US Embassy websites for your country also are going to have some of the latest information regarding entry requirements, and that could be things like testing requirements. A lot of countries are requiring you to be tested, 24 to 72 hours before you board your flight back, or board your flight to, that country. And also, of course, the US is requiring it on the way back. So there's information about the testing requirements, quarantine requirements, if there are any. So make sure to find out what the entry requirements are for your country. And then there's what's called CFAR, IFAR insurance coverage. CFAR stands for cancel for any reason, and IFAR stands for interrupt for any reason. So this is some insurance you could buy. This is not a UVA insurance. This is not connected with us, but there is a link that's sort of designed for student study abroad travelers at that link. It is recommended in case, number one, if you decide for some reason you can't go, or number two, if your program is canceled at the last minute, but you have already paid out a lot of money, buying that CFAR, IFAR coverage could help you recoup some of the costs that you have paid towards the program. And of course, there are the UA links. You've seen probably the health info site, and I mentioned the FAQs that we have as well. All right, some questions and factors to consider. And these are just a few of the questions. These are not all of the questions that, of course, you could ask or might need to ask, but these are some of the main ones. And sort of broken down by topics of providers. So all of you going abroad are probably going abroad with a third-party institution an affiliate, maybe someone like API or ISA or Lead Abroad or somebody like that. So first of all, of course, confirm that their program is still running. Sometimes these programs will change and cancel sort of on a somewhat short notice. So make sure that your program is going, and we'll be able to host you there. And then follow whatever instructions they're giving you about your arrival, about, again, those testing and quarantine requirements, about your housing and all that. Make sure you follow their policies and protocols, since they are going to be the one facilitating your program. You also might want to know what the refund policy is, and that is, of course, before the program as well as possibly during the program. If for some reason you had to leave in the middle of the program, could you get any kind of refund? And if so, what would be the conditions for that refund? What are the academic and financial policies if the program had to move to online remote learning atmosphere, after the program starts? Would you still be able to take those courses that you are planning to take? Would you still be able to take those online? Financially, if they go online and you had to return to the US and check out of your housing early, can you get some kind of refund for that? Every provider may be different, answer that question differently. So find out what your provider's answer is to these questions. Location-wise, what are the quarantine or other requirements? I've talked about this some already, but make sure you're very, very clear on what that requirement is, and that you get the appropriate test or whatever it might be to meet that requirement. Second question might be, do you need a visa? And what are the steps to obtaining one? How could that be affected by COVID-19? Sometimes that is delaying the processing of visas for students trying to get a visa. And this will probably mostly affect students going abroad in the fall. Most of you going abroad in the summer, you may not need a visa, although that's not 100%, but most of you probably will not need a visa to go in the summer. But if you're going in the fall, there's a decent chance you will need a visa, since you're gonna be there for a longer period of time. And then, are COVID-19 tests readily available in your location? And this, of course, is number one, if you do start to develop symptoms or in contact with somebody with COVID, you need to know where and how to get tested. And number two, as mentioned earlier, the CDC, the US CDC has required travelers to show a negative COVID test within 72 hours of travel. So you need to make sure you arrange that beforehand before you come back to the US. Where will you get tested? And then travel questions. Is air travel to your location accessible? What is your airline's flight refund and or flight change policy? This is another note here. We would recommend that you buy that flight insurance. Oftentimes when you're purchasing a flight, it gives you that option to check, yes, I want the flight insurance. This time we would recommend you do purchase that flight insurance. Again, that would protect kind of the cost you've paid towards that flight in case your program's canceled, or in case you have to cancel your intentions to go sort of after you bought the flight. And then I've mentioned already that cancel for any reason or interrupt for any reason insurance coverage. We do recommend it. It's not a UA insurance, but we do recommend it, and you can find the link to that. We're going to send this presentation to you so you can find the link there. Another question or issue that is out there now is regarding vaccinations. And we would recommend, and please listen up at this point, if at all possible, and you have time to do so, we would recommend that you get vaccinated with a COVID-19 vaccine before you go abroad. Number one, it would protect your own health in regards to the danger of COVID. Number two, though, it really potentially could facilitate your ease of travel into different countries. If you can show proof of vaccination, that might smooth your way a little bit. There's no guarantees. There's a lot of countries still kind of working out what kind of policy they might apply towards vaccinated travelers. I know in the US, if you are vaccinated when you enter the country, and then it does kind of shorten, your quarantine. Actually, there's no quarantine requirement if you've been vaccinated and had that negative test when you come back to the US. They just ask you to monitor your symptoms and then get tested 3 to 5 days afterwards to confirm you're still negative. Anyway, other countries could be implementing similar measures, and if you are vaccinated, then you'll have that kind of addressed already. There's a question here.
When we arrive in the US, do we need our vaccination card, or is it a picture of it, or do you
I would recommend carrying both kinds. So I would recommend the question, in case you're online, regarding your vaccination card, do you need the physical copy, or can you just have a picture? And I would recommend keeping a copy of both. So try to have a physical copy on your person, in your wallet, or in your belongings, and then a picture on your phone or would be also recommended. Okay, so those are some of the main questions. Again, there are many other questions regarding COVID and different factors. Transition a little bit, talk about insurance. I've talked a little bit about international SOS already, but I want to talk more deeply about kind of the insurance and how to use it. First of all, this is, if you are a UA student studying abroad for academic credit, you are automatically enrolled in this insurance. And it is really good insurance. It's specifically designed really for study abroad travel. And so it covers up to $250,000 per accident or sickness. And again, that's per accident or sickness. That's not total accidents or sicknesses. So if you have a cold or you break your hand, you need to go to the doctor, it'd cover up to $250,000 of that. And then if the next week you broke your ankle, it would cover up to $250,000 of that. Hopefully that won't happen, but it is good coverage in that way. $0 deductible. You might have to pay out of pocket up front at first, but you could get reimbursed from the insurance company for those costs. If you did have to be evacuated for some kind of emergency or security situation, then that could be covered. And again, to contact them, that is the US number, but also if you have the app, which we really strongly urge you to download the International SOS app, then you can contact them via the app, just pressing the button. When you get the app, you need to use this policy number, starts with 11BCAM, et cetera. Use that policy number to register, and also your UA email address to register, and that will tie you into your study abroad program dates and location. So make sure you do that. There are a few exclusions that sometimes insurance may not cover. So if you got injured while doing some of these activities like skydiving, bungee jumping, things of that nature, then insurance might be less likely to cover your medical costs. Regarding this, one more note. So especially those of you in the room, within your handouts, there is a insurance handout that has all this has a card, looks very similar to that on there. So make sure you keep that with you. All right, so some people ask, why do I need this international insurance? I already have insurance. And there's some major differences oftentimes between probably what your primary insurance here in the US might be compared to your international insurance with international SOS. So first of all, your international SOS insurance has emergency evacuations coverage, which not all US domestic insurance would have. It has a medical or union coverage. So what this means is if you happen to end up in the hospital somewhere for a longer period of time, then this insurance could fly a loved one or family member to be by your side during that stay, and it would cover their cost. On that note, make sure that somebody in your family or a loved one has a passport, a valid passport, and so they could get to you and could enter the country if they needed to. It also includes some really good mental health coverage that we encourage students to use if they need it. And then there's a variety of other things that it has coverage for. So these are kind of differences that you would find probably in this international designed insurance versus a domestic insurance policy. There are a lot more details about international SOS and the intricacies of the policy in your study abroad application. So check that out if you need more information. A few other things regarding health and safety. Okay, we have a question. Yes.
For the medical reunion,
yes.
part, if something happens, would the family member just book the flight and everything and then get reimbursed later?
Yes. Yes. Yeah, it can work that way, or potentially we could contact International SOS and arrange payment on the front end too, depending on the timing of everything.
So my family should contact you, your office first.
That if there's time and able to do that, then yes. But if not, and they just want to get on the next flight out and go ahead and pay for it, then they could do that and reimburse them at that can. So either way, yeah. Beforehand would be the best. I would say the less paperwork, but either way it's fine. Okay, some other things regarding health and safety. So medication, first of all, make sure you have a If you're on any medications you take regularly, make sure you have an adequate supply to cover you during your time abroad. Be mindful of any regulations regarding that medication in the country you're going to. There's some countries that outlaw certain kind of medications, but if you can take a copy of your prescription from a doctor, then and have them in your original containers, then that would be the best practice. We do ask that you use your, and this is a case where you use your personal domestic insurance to get your medication before you go. Don't use your international insurance to get your medications. Use your usual insurance to do that. If you need immunizations, and this would include, of course, COVID, then make sure you're aware of which immunizations you might need and where you can get those. There is a travel clinic here on campus via the Student Health Center. So if you have some immunizations kind of on the list of where you're going, then they could help you find those and get those done before you go. And if you're kind of curious and like what immunizations should I take? Well, the CDC, which is this top left screenshot here, this is a screenshot of the CDC website. If you click on the country where you're going, it'll pop up all the kind of the medical health and safety information. It also includes a list of the recommended immunizations for that location. So that would be where you could find that information. Of course, now they also have a lot of updated COVID information for that location as well. So you want to check that out. Another website that we recommend is the State Department's website. You can kind of see on the bottom left corner here. Again, find your country on that website. You can kind of read all of the details about what's going on in that country from a health, safety, and security standpoint. There's good information there, and it gets broken down fairly locally as well. And then I mentioned earlier this STEP program. So I do want to talk about this for a second. Smart Traveler Enrollment. That's what STEP program is, what STEP stands for. And we do ask that you register yourself in STEP. And I think it's step.state.gov. And you can register your travel, your location, your dates. And that will notify the nearest U.S. Embassy of your presence in the country. If they need to get a hold of you, then they could contact you if you're registered in STEP. This became really important last spring 2020, when COVID-19 kind of hit, and all of a sudden there are many countries in the world began to kind of shut down travel and close their borders. And all of a sudden we had students who were scrambling, trying to get back to the US. In some cases, they were not able to get back in kind of in on the first flights. And so they're, how do you get out of the country? Well, the US, many of the US embassies around the world, they arranged charter flights for US citizens that were there in the country. And the way they did that was if you're registered in STEP, then they could reach out and notify you of these flights. And so it was really important to be registered in STEP at that time. And so should something like that similarly happen, you want to be registered in STEP. All right, a few other things. So know yourself and your surroundings, the Student Code of Conduct. So the UA Student Code of Conduct still does apply while you are abroad, even though you're not on campus here in Tuscaloosa. You are a UA student going abroad, representing UA. So therefore the Code of Conduct does apply. And if we hear of different conduct violations that may be committed while abroad, then you can be put through the usual Student Code of Conduct process that you might hear if it happened on campus or near campus. Also mentioned the Personal Emergency Action Plan. Again, that's on page 51 of the handbook, but make sure you look at that and know beforehand what you're going to do if something happens, who to call, how to call, where to go. Go ahead and think through those steps on the front end. And then there is this travel tips safety video. Has a few basic tips that we're going to share with you. So we're going to watch this.
I said it before, and I will say it again. You can never do too much research for a trip. And it's the kind of research that will help you. Google Maps is my BFF. Wherever I'll be staying, I type in the address and check out the proximity of neighborhoods, nearby subway, bus stops, and using Street View, I actually walk and check out the area and make sure that there isn't anything fishy I should know in advance about. That way, when you arrive, you won't be totally lost. Tip numero dos, research and read up on the culture of the place. You want to be aware of what you're not supposed to do. Am I not supposed to wear short shorts? Am I not supposed to wear skinny bikinis? And the golden rule, do as the locals do. On to a big subject. theft and pickpocketing. If you haven't seen my video on how to keep your passport safe, please do. Number one, keep not just your eyes, but your hands on your bags, purses, and totes. Slinging them onto the back of a chair, leaving them under chairs, make them easy targets for stealing or for leaving behind. Number two, get into the habit of looking back. Before you get out of that cab, before you get up from that table, look back and make sure you're not leaving anything behind. Number three, if you're carrying electronic equipment, make sure you don't have a bag that screams out, I have thousands of dollars in equipment. If you're shopping, consolidate and put all your booty in one bag. And as for music, leave that music further playing. Disconnecting from an environment can make you less aware and more vulnerable. And some common sense. Do not walk into a dark alley in the middle of the night alone. You wouldn't do it at home, would you? Do not get crazy drunk. For obvious reasons. Just don't do it. And finally, get in touch with that sixth sense. We all have it, and it's usually right. If the food looks too weird, don't eat it. If the cab doesn't really look like a cab and you don't want to go on it, don't go on it. If that guy or that girl gives you the heebie-jeebies, stay away. Trust your instincts. But honestly, I've said it before, the world is a nicer, safer place than people give it credit for. Chances are you will be the one leaving something behind, or you will be the one not abiding by the rules. So just be prepared.
First of all, of course, don't stand out. Try to blend in. So as much as you can, try to blend in while you're abroad. Don't get out large sums of cash in public unless it's absolutely necessary. There are some places that are more cash-based, of course, than the U.S. If you can help it, try not to get out big wads of money. Obviously, that could make you a target in some people's mind. Be careful about giving out personal information to strangers, keeping food and drink in sight while socializing. Again, this is same kind of advice we would give here in Tuscaloosa. Carry cash on more than one pocket, or consider using a money belt. Do not go out alone, groups of three. When we say groups of three, in case something were to happen, one person could stay with a person that might be, need assistance. Another person could run and go get help. And that's why we say groups of three. Know the local emergency numbers. I've talked about that. And then contact International SOS if you need assistance as well, using the app preferably. I've talked about that. Those are a few tips. At the airport, these are kind of specific to certain situations. So arrange in advance for transportation upon arrival. So possibly the program you're going on is going to tell you, hey, we'll provide airport pickup at this time and this place during this, on this day. So if they do that, then we do recommend that you arrive during that time they've said. If you can, if it's all possible, try to do that so that you don't have to think through, all the details of getting from the airport to your accommodations. But also, try to arrive not late at night or early in the morning if possible, and then move with purpose and security through security as quickly as possible. So again, not advertising that you are unfamiliar with the surroundings and are not sure what to do, but advertise that you're traveling alone. All right, communication, keeping your phone charged, obviously in case you need it at any time. Activate the international roaming or use international calling. So different calling plans out there. You're going to hear more from a student here in a minute about things they did to keep in touch and communicate while abroad. Program key contact numbers prior to you going. So go ahead and have those numbers both here in the US, but also key numbers for people abroad that you might need to contact with. So who's directing your program and who's kind of the on-call contact there. Keeping hard copies of numbers as well in case something does happen to your phone or your computer and you lose it, you still have a hard copy. And then perhaps keeping prepaid phone calls and spare change for spare money for emergency calls. These are all good pieces of advice in order to maintain communication. Accommodations, if you do end up in a hotel, of course, consider the hotel location. You might consider, in that video she talked about using Google Earth, maybe using Street View to look around the location and see if this looks like a place that you'd want to be. Be careful in not revealing more than necessary personal information when you check in. And if you can select your room, and try to select one of security in mind, so not on the ground floor. But one does have a deadbolt, does have the peephole, does have an isolated entry, so that that'd be the safest kind of situation. Know, of course, where the emergency exits are and use the interim safe for valuables. And then when you have to move about within your city or location, use only licensed taxi companies or Uber. If somebody tells you that they're a licensed taxi driver or something, don't just take their word for it. Make sure it's an official car of some kind, or Uber, as mentioned. Sitting in the back seat, don't sit in the front. Have an idea, before you go, like this trip should take 15 minutes and it should go in this general direction, so that you can kind of be aware that they're heading in the right direction and taking the appropriate amount of time. Agree on the fare in advance, and wearing your seatbelt, that's always a good piece of advice wherever you are. And don't get in if there's already somebody in there and they say, oh, we're gonna drop this person off first. Just don't go, just wait on another one before you get in.
And if you have any questions, health and safety related, feel free to reach out to your education abroad advisor. And if we don't know the answer to that question, we're more than happy to pass it along to Chad, especially if it's not a question you want to ask at pre-departure orientation. If you want to ask the question afterwards, just let us know. All right, quick quiz for the people in front of me. Sorry, guys. What is the thing she said in the video that is the golden rule? Do as the locals do. So, when she was talking in the video, she talks about, like, if you see something strange, don't eat it. Now, we're not discouraging you from enjoying the local culture and getting to be a part of that community. But what she's talking about is if you see something like when I was in Nepal and there was fish on the side of the road that had clearly been there a little too long. And it was like, okay, maybe going somewhere where they were going to fry it fresh instead of somewhere where it's been sitting out. So things like that is what she means when she says do as the locals do. She doesn't mean don't try anything that makes you uncomfortable. We definitely want to make you uncomfortable, and we want to make sure you're stepping outside your comfort zone. But we still want you to do as the locals do. If the locals aren't eating it, don't eat it. If the locals are eating it, you're probably chill to eat it. Kind of rule of thumb. Just wanted to clear that up. All right, so next we're moving on to academics and registration. So if you haven't already, we have probably messaged you 1 or 20 times. Yeah, probably. You're probably receiving a lot of emails from us, but you need to complete your UA study abroad application. If there's any important info that you're still lacking, please make sure to complete it. If you're like, okay, well, I still don't quite have all that information, just email your education abroad advisor and let them know that you don't quite have that last bit of information. If you haven't booked your flight yet for fall, we understand. Just shoot us an email and we can update that later. That's not an issue, but we are checking to make sure you do as much of your application as possible and as much information in there as you have. Also, if there's any important info that you want to know when it comes to the course approval process, course registration process, all of that is in your study abroad application, as well as emails that have come from your education abroad advisor. So please read those. And don't forget to complete your applications on the affiliates or partner side, which we have talked about in emails. So hopefully y'all have all done that by now. All right. So summer and fall 2021 registration important dates. We are still going by the rule of thumb with on-campus courses being a contingency plan. So our rule of thumb is plan for the worst, hope for the best. And that's what we're going to keep doing. Unfortunately, due to the global pandemic that we are facing, we have to plan for the worst and hope for the best. So we're going to keep our on-campus courses up until the date where we have to switch to that CIP. Now, that is going to vary from student to student. If a student is using scholarships, if a student has certain deadlines, et cetera, your switch date is going to be different than someone else's. So just be aware of that and work with your education abroad advisor to form a go, no-go date if you have not already. If you already know your go, no-go date, you've done all the appropriate things, that's fine. But if you haven't already, feel free to reach out to your education abroad advisor, shoot them an email, and let them know your go, no-go date. So if you're planning on using scholarships, these are the dates that you have to get the forms done by and enroll in CIP by and have your student bill due by. So make sure you follow these dates. They are in an email from your Education Abroad advisor, so check that. If you got rejected for your scholarship request form, just shoot your Education Abroad advisor an email and we can fix that. The only reason you would get rejected is if you're not currently enrolled in your CIP course. But obviously, since we're planning for the worst and hoping for the best, we haven't switched over from our on-campus courses necessarily to our CIP placeholder. So just shoot your Education Abroad advisor an email and we can get that fixed. All right, moving on to planning and logistics. And I'm gonna get rid of my video because you can't really see me. Cool, bye. All right. Passport, visas, and residence permits. So hopefully you have your passport already. If you do not, please reach out to your Education Abroad advisor immediately. Do you need a visa and a residence permit? You should know that by now, but again, if you don't, reach out to your affiliate provider, your exchange institution, or your Education Abroad advisor, and we can work with you to make sure you have all the appropriate paperwork you need for your study abroad term. If you need any special Education Abroad advisor letters saying you're planning on doing a specific program or you're enrolled, just let us know. We're more than happy to help you with that. But do not procrastinate because those are time sensitive, so the earlier, the better. What to pack? So pack light, check airline baggage policies. The rule of thumb for packing for a study abroad program, whether it's a summer program or a semester program, is you should be able to carry your items, every single item you're taking with you on your study abroad program by yourself and up 3 flights of stairs. If you cannot carry them by yourself and up 3 flights of stairs, you've probably packed too much. Now I know a lot of you are like, oh, but I'm going for a full semester. Like I need all this stuff. Not necessarily. So just make sure to pack once and then unpack half is another special rule for packing. Just thinking about what you actually need. There's tons of videos on YouTube about how to pack. If you have any more questions though, we're here to help you. In your carry-on though, make sure you have copies of all your letters and travel docs that you need. Make sure you have an extra change of clothes and prescriptions and meds in your carry-on. And the reason it's important to have it in your carry-on is because in case your checked baggage gets lost. Make sure to pack comfy shoes and clothes, but not your entire closet. So making sure you have layers and you're prepared for the specific weather and location. Again, YouTube is a great resource for finding videos of students going to certain locations. Make sure you're dressing for the occasion and you're understanding the cultural expectations for what to wear in said location. We'll talk about that a little bit more later on, but definitely research what they wear locally. You don't want to show up wearing classic big t-shirt and shorts and flip-flops when most people wear pants and an actual blouse to class with shoes. So just making sure to realize what they wear locally and kind of adapt to that. Bringing athletic clothes might make you look touristy or American, but having athletic clothes for working out is totally an option. Obviously, it's going to vary between your locations. Some people might be going to Thailand for a full semester. And if you are going somewhere like that, then beachy clothes or shorts are no big deal. Sandals are no big deal. But if you're going somewhere that's rainy or colder or more conservative in the dress, you need to be kind of aware of that. Having a weekender bag available if you are to take any weekend trips or overnight trips and not want to bring all of your luggage is a big pro. Highly recommend a backpack or a duffel for weekending or taking hiking trips, etc. Don't forget your meds, hygiene products, glasses, and contacts. But one thing I like to mention is don't forget you can buy things abroad. I know that sounds like overly simplified, but I feel like before I studied abroad, I hadn't traveled much before. And I was like, no, I have to pack this one specific medication or hair product that I needed or toothpaste because I'm never going to have time or find this item abroad. And more than likely you will have time and you will find that item abroad. And more than likely you will buy things. So when it comes to clothing or things you think you might not have enough of, you will buy things abroad. So making room for that and being aware of that before you go abroad is important. If you're staying with a host family, some things to consider are potentially bringing them an Alabama gift or souvenir, something to share part of your culture with them. And even if you're not staying with an entire host family, but you're planning on doing some cultural visits with a local family where they're making you dinner, etc., bringing them a small token of appreciation and a gift that represents your home is just a nice added benefit. So I highly encourage doing that if you are planning on interacting with any locals. All right, so finances, we talked about scholarship disbursement. It only disperses a few days prior to the start of the semester. Be aware of that, plan for that. Create a budget. We talk about this at our Money Matters workshops. We have them every Wednesday at 3 o'clock. So if you are interested in hearing our Money Matters spiel, I highly encourage it. We go into details about creating a budget. If you want any extra information, my background is in personal financial planning, so I was all about budgeting when I studied abroad, and I'd be more than happy to talk to you about that. Yeah. So Money Matters workshops will stop. She asked when the Money Matters workshops will stop. What is this week? This is not finals, right? Next week's finals. Okay, so 22nd. So next week will probably be our last Money Matters workshop on a regularly scheduled basis. But if you just shoot me an email, I'm more than happy to have a one-on-one Money Matters session with you and go into serious detail or more detail than usual. Sometimes you might not feel comfortable talking about all those things in front of other people. Sometimes you do. So just let me know. I'd be more than happy to walk you through that. So would our other advisors. They've got experience with that as well. But checking conversion rates is important when budgeting. Carrying cash is important. Sometimes you'll notice a certain location is either a cash or a card location, meaning they're pretty much only going to accept card or they're only going to accept cash. And you'll want to be prepared for that and aware of that. Checking your budget sheet for other expenses. So you do have a budget sheet that's on the financial tab of our website. If you want to input any information into the budget sheet to make sure you're fully prepared for budgeting abroad. Definitely have these apps downloaded that you need to use. Most of you will have like a Venmo or a PayPal or a Cash App. I know those three were three I used pretty heavily when I studied abroad. And the reason I used them pretty heavily was this thing down here at the bottom where it says, check for foreign transaction and ATM fees on your credit and debit cards. And the reason that's so important is because all my friends when I studied abroad were getting charged $20, $25 every time they had to go to the ATM. And they were like, hey, Sarah, can we Venmo you? And then you get money out of the ATM for us since your card doesn't have any fees. And I was like, yes. And that's something I super prepared for study abroad, but not everybody kind of thinks of. So definitely check your card and notify any banks that you have that you will be studying abroad. And make sure you have account information for things like that. One thing we talked about that I never thought of is if you're a guy and you're studying abroad, making sure you have somewhere to keep coins. Apparently, I guess this is, women most of the time carry purses or something to put lots of coins in, and there are locations like the euro where sometimes you'll have a lot of euros that combine, and then you're going to have like 30 coins in your pocket, and that's too many coins in your pocket weighing you down. But that's also like $30 you don't want to get rid of, or even more. So making sure you have somewhere to store coins and keep track of how many euros you're spending. Because I know in the US, most of the time when we see coins, we just put it in a jar and we're like, eh. But when a coin is like $1 or $5, it becomes a lot more serious. Make sure you know your PIN number. Write down your card info in case it's to be lost or stolen. But more importantly, save your bank's international telephone number into your cell phone contact list so that you have it in the event of an emergency, or save it to the cloud as well in case you lose your cell phone too. Be aware of table service charges, how that location splits checks and tipping. Some locations tipping is going to be more common. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's expected because they see you're American. So just kind of be aware of tipping in the location you're going. When it comes to splitting checks, normally they don't split checks in most locations. So just being aware of, hey, someone's going to have to front the bill and we're all going to have to pay them. So having that person in your friend group who is like that person, it's kind of important. I was that person, but I'm like a spreadsheet geek. So I kept spreadsheets of like what everybody owed everybody. So just making sure you know what you owe people and what they owe you is kind of important. And then do your own research before arriving as well. Keep yourself accountable. All right, so tech abroad. Do not pack hair dryers or appliances. You can pack appliances, but they are pretty bulky when packing them. So making sure that they are appliances you really, really need when it comes to being like a hair dryer or straightener or something like that. But make sure it also fits the wattage and the expectations of the country you're going to be in. You don't want to fry $100 hair products or appliance because you didn't realize that the wattage didn't convert correctly or adapt correctly. There are certain brands that are travel specific, so I highly recommend looking those up if that's something that interests you, or potentially even buying products abroad. Adapters, so you're probably going to need adapters, not necessarily converters, but definitely research that for your local location. As for phone options, you can check with your provider to see if they have phone service in said location and if you're willing to pay for it. If you have T-Mobile, I know their plan is really flexible when it comes to international service, but you'll still want to check. Most other locations are like $10 a day or up to $50 to $100 a month, depending on your provider. So make sure you check that. If you're planning on using a local SIM card, make sure to unlock your phone. You can buy a phone prepaid or pay as you go. Or you can be a student who just uses Wi-Fi. So you can just jump from Wi-Fi to Wi-Fi, coffee shop to coffee shop, home to out and about. Just be aware that that's what you're going to have to do when it comes to communication, such as WhatsApp, FaceTime, text messages, etc. Wi-Fi may be less reliable though, because you are connecting to coffee shops, etc. Passcodes are typically required at most locations. So just be aware of that if you are going to be the Wi-Fi only crowd. And then decide if IT travel insurance is something that you're interested in, like for a lost or stolen or broken cell phone. Make sure you have passcodes or the app for Duo Abroad, because you're still going to have to access your Crimson email. And if you don't have passcodes or the app, you're not going to be able to access it. You can use the UAVPN if you need to be like on campus digitally for something specific, like a test or a quiz or accessing things. Google what VPNs are and kind of figure that out for yourself if you need that. I'm not super tech savvy. Okay. Registration and enrollment. Making sure before and while you're abroad that you have a plan for how to register for the next semester. So that doesn't apply really to summer students, but for fall students, if you are going abroad, making sure you have a plan for registering for spring and that you've already gotten it approved by your academic advisor. Write down serial and model numbers. So if you have electronics you're taking with you, in the event they are to be stolen or broken, make sure you write down their serial and model numbers and keep that somewhere. And then make sure to check your email, your UA email regularly. I know our student assistants are about to leave us, but they're not going to leave us quite yet. All right. So some behavioral and cultural expectations to have in location. This picture to the left we always use because this is like a classic American quad going girl over here on the left with her baggy t-shirt and her flip-flops. This is kind of outdated photo, I'm not gonna lie. But just being aware of the local dress and the location you're going to. This could be replaced with any kind of gym clothes. Where here in the US, we're pretty comfy when we dress most of the time for class. And abroad, they might dress a little more formal for class. So just be aware of that. The picture to the right is of a wine glass. Wine, there's some like culture shock TikToks and stuff that are really interesting. Wine being one of the ones that people are like, oh, I can just have a glass of wine at lunch with a colleague or even my professor or teacher, and it'd be completely casual. That might be a little bit of a culture shock for you, but also just being aware of the cultural expectations of what it means when you drink wine. Drinking wine is just a part of the regular day-to-day at lunch. It's not drinking wine to get drunk like it normally is here in American culture. The picture at the bottom talks about that being aware of local laws and regulations and making sure you read signs. I know I've broken certain laws and rules or gotten on a wrong train or things like that where I have had to have been fined, which is not fun. And you don't want to catch yourself in an opportunity where you have to be fined for something you did wrong. So just be aware and make sure you read signs. If it tells you not to go somewhere, don't go there. If it tells you to stay away from the cliffs of Moher and you're in Dublin, Ireland, don't do that. Things like that. You're just going to want to be aware, read signs, and not get in trouble. And at the top, it talks about drug trafficking is punishable by death in the ROC. That's just a picture to remind you, even if you don't know the law, you still have to obey the law. So making sure you know as much as you can about the local culture and expectations, and making sure you don't do something you could be seriously punished for or get in trouble for in general. All right. Living abroad. So keeping in mind, you are an ambassador while you're abroad. A lot of things will be different. Public transit, bikes, bus, trams, taxis, being aware of those forms of transportation and how to use them and when it's safe to use them. A lot of times you can use an app like Google Maps while you're on Wi-Fi, keep it running, and then once you're off Wi-Fi, it'll keep running within the route you need to take, just making sure you take the buses or the walking trail that it originally suggested. So yeah, meet locals. Don't be afraid to meet locals and socialize when you can. Obviously, with the global pandemic and COVID being a thing, we want you to be as safe as possible. But if it is safe for you to meet locals, definitely do that. Be okay with differences and ambiguity. Yeah, that's a good thing to be and be adaptable to your situations and things around you. As for housing, be respectful. Every culture is going to be a little bit different when it comes to their housing expectations. Most of them are not going to be American style housing. You're not going to have elevators in most apartment complexes, or an apartment complex isn't even the right word to use to explain a lot of housing that you'll be in. So just being aware, sometimes you won't have a dryer for your clothes. You have to hang your clothes out on the line to dry, things like that. And utilities can be very expensive. Some locations are very eco-friendly, so like 3-minute showers instead of long showers, things like that. Some locations might not have air conditioning, so being aware of the air conditioning expectations of said location, and how you're going to adapt to that. Knowing some local language, so not knowing a whole language fluently, obviously those aren't the expectations, but knowing key words and phrases you can use to get by in a specific location. Customer service. So being aware that customer service is a lot different than here in the US. Customer service at a restaurant abroad might, like in Italy, for example, a lot of y'all going to Italy, they're not just going to bring you your ticket when you're done eating. You have to ask for your ticket to pay. It's rude if they just brought it to you. Things like that are things you'll learn while you're abroad, but something just to be aware of. Cultural norms within that location, along with customer service. It's expected that you tip certain people in certain cultures, but not other people. So you'll be surprised you don't tip waitresses or things like that, but you might tip a bag man or someone at a hotel. So just be aware of who you should be referring to normally. If you need any identity resources or anything, please reach out to your education abroad advisor. We'd be more than happy to help you get any specific identity resources. If you are looking for assistance with a differing ability, a specific gender identity, a racial identity, et cetera, more than happy to help you with those kinds of resources. Now we're gonna go back. One of the things the guys were talking about when they talked about culture shock were the different phases of culture shock. So typically you start off when you go abroad in this honeymoon phase, like everybody is so excited you're going abroad, you're super pumped, everything is awesome. Even the trees, the food, water tastes more like water, I don't know, everything is good. So you're definitely in that honeymoon phase where just everything is right. But then something typically happens, just like things happen here in life, that becomes some kind of uncomfortable moment, a moment of rejection or a moment of not feeling 100%. And you'll notice, oh, like maybe I just don't like this location, or I just don't like what they do in this way, or I disagree with this. And you kind of become a little bit more hostile is one word they use, but I think that's a little bit extreme, but agitated with the local culture and people that you may be interacting with. So just being aware of that like initial rejection of like, oh, this isn't necessarily my home. And then you get into this period of regression. You're kind of over that like quick downfall of, wait, this isn't like constantly the best thing ever. Just being in another country doesn't make my life perfect kind of situation. And you realize, okay, well, I still enjoy the place I'm in. I can recognize the differences that exist, and I can make the most of my time in this new home and realize the different cultures and make the most of it. And then you'll kind of move back up to recovery. You'll understand that, hey, this is going to be my new home for this amount of time. I'm going to enjoy my time here while I'm here, and I'll be able to have a good time. But just allowing yourself time to adjust and be mindful throughout this. Personally, I don't feel that culture shock is a specific curve that goes like this and you're done. I think it's more of like a roller coaster kind of thing, just like you have emotions here in the States. You're gonna have really good days, you're gonna have bad days, and you're gonna have in between days. And you just wanna be aware of that. Like he mentioned, talking to your other friends and people you know that are doing the study abroad program and people you'll meet is one, a great way to bond with people, but two, a great way to talk out what's important to you and why you're feeling the way you're feeling and what you can do differently about that. You can talk with them about just being mindful of the situation you're in, establishing routines to make it feel more like home, especially if you're there for a full semester. You can talk about, you can meet new people, always using the buddy system, of course. If you are good at journaling or keeping a diary or a blog, definitely do that. I've seen some students do it through like, honestly, Snapchat stories or Instagram highlights. It makes it a little less formal and a little more personable. And it's something you can do. You can even make it private if you want to and do it in a different like Instagram or an alternative note-keeping app, things like that, and then make it just a little bit easier to use. So I would highly encourage you to find some way to do that because you will be feeling a lot of experiences. I know when I studied abroad, I felt amazing and everything was going great for the first, like, I don't know, 3 weeks. And then one of my friends who was more of an introvert than I was got burned out real fast. And she was like, nope, I'm done. Like, I'm burned out. I need 3 days of sleep and not to see anybody. Like, please give me my space. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, and I was definitely feeling like, oh, but like, we got to go. We got to make the most of our time, and really slowing down to be mindful about the situation you're in can help you adjust to that kind of culture shock of everything going on and things being so different. Don't forget to exercise, practice your own hobbies. I've had some students who are like, oh, well, I was so busy studying abroad, I didn't go running the whole time I was abroad. And that was my everyday hobby when I was in the States. And I could really feel like a bit of myself drained. I wasn't taking time enough for herself because she wasn't doing her hobby. So just keeping that in mind. And then the last part is going to be about reverse culture shock. So that reverse, when you get home and you're back with your friends and family and they haven't gone through this crazy, amazing experience that you've gone through, or these crazy emotions, or met these people and kind of really understand at all what you're talking about, that can be a huge shock. It could also be a shock that you've gone through this huge life event in a new country and with new people, and the people back at home are still like the same, or they've gone through things that are different too. And you kind of like having that realization when you get back is a big shock. It's hard to explain at the moment, but it is something that does happen. So just be aware of that when you get back. There are resources for you. Talking with the people you've met and your friends is a huge resource. Honestly, sleeping off a couple days of your study abroad experience, if you have the time to do so, is always good as well. You just kind of need that time to rest and reflect. And talking with your Education Abroad advisor or with our Education Abroad Alumni Association about your experiences and what you can do from here is really important. So one thing we want to talk about also within culture is what is surface level versus like deep culture. So surface level culture is typically what we talk about when we talk about like celebrations, food, what a location's known for. But deep culture is like the cultural expectations within location. So how important is gender roles within a location? What are cultural expectations when it comes to like respect and communication? Those are going to be your more of like deep cultural understanding that you will want to figure out as much as you can before studying abroad, but that will also be pretty big shocks to you when you get into location, because hearing about a different gender role expectation here in the States and then experiencing that different expectation when you're abroad is a completely different experience. So just making sure you're aware of that, you make time for yourself, and if you do need to take a pause on your experience to reflect or to recoup, that you do that for yourself. Okay, so this is the culture wheel. It just talks about all the things that kind of make up culture and things to be aware of. So like we talked about, traditions and rituals and things like that are going to be like outward presentations of culture. Same with language. When you're talking about language within a culture, you're going to have slang and current words that aren't as used as much. So if you have studied a language and you're going abroad for that language, there will still be tons of opportunities to learn even more languages, or languages you might not have heard, or words you might not have heard before within that language. So just be aware that that's going to be maybe a shock for you, maybe a new accent for you, things like that. Community and values are going to be really important to certain locations. Here in the US, we're very individualistic when it comes to everything we do, versus other countries will be more community oriented and focusing on bringing up the community instead of the individual. Yeah. Let me talk about that. All right. So when you are abroad, making sure that you are open to growing your mindset. So thinking about your different mindset characteristics, what your current beliefs are, and what you're focusing on. Not asking you to change anything by any means, but being open to understanding other people's beliefs and growing within your own. So understanding someone's culture and what they do on a day-to-day basis and how they do it and why they do it that way and the history of that location will give you a better understanding of who they are and almost make you reflect on who you are and why you have the beliefs you do, and what you're doing to grow those beliefs. So you're going to overcome a lot of challenges while you're abroad, but you want to embrace them and preserve like a frame of opportunity when you're embracing these challenges. So for instance, you might get on a bus or a train that's going the wrong way. And instead of letting that ruin your entire experience or your belief in public transportation, having more of a growth mindset and saying, hey, I can overcome this. This is going to make a better trip for me because I'm now going to understand that, hey, when the arrow is pointing this way, it means I need to get on this bus and not that bus. And you'll have those moments where things go wrong. It's going to happen. So just brace for them, make time for them, and try to grow from them. You're going to make mistakes and just use them to learn and treat them as opportunities. If people do give you feedback or useful information, maybe not jump to necessarily a defensive place or take them personally, but appreciate it and use it to grow. So how to get involved while you're abroad. Again, definitely join the Alabama Abroad 2021 Facebook group. That's going to be kind of where you can connect to current UA students. Follow us on our Instagram and on our TikTok. We really don't use our Facebook or Twitter as much. It's mainly our Instagram and TikTok. And if you want to get involved with helping make posts or going live while you are abroad, definitely reach out to us. We'd be more than happy to help, to get your help with our Instagram and our TikTok, making videos or sharing photos. You can pick up a big owl to take with you on your study abroad program and take pictures with. He's pretty cute. He's not any bigger than my forearm, I guess. And all you have to do is email Adrian Hall or scan this QR code here that we have in the front of our desk and let us know that you're interested in having a big owl, and she will arrange either for you to get a big owl or to be drawn from a list of people who are getting big owls. Okay, so getting involved when you return. Definitely getting involved by tagging us in any of your social media posts. If you're willing to let us follow you, we're more than happy to follow you. Just DM us. As long as you follow us, we'll follow you back. And tag us in any of your social media, and we're more than happy to share it on our platform. We have a photo contest every year, as well as a video contest where we ask for permission for submissions for your best photos that you took abroad. Those come with scholarship money for first place. So I highly encourage you to submit as many and any photos that you're interested in submitting, as well as videos. We have education abroad student assistants within our office. So if you're interested in being an education abroad student assistant and working with us once you're back on campus, please let us know. Go ahead and shoot us an email. We're more than happy to interview as many students for starting back in fall if you're a summer student, or even next spring if you're a fall student, or if you're going abroad for a year and you'll still be at UA the year after. Please email us. We'd be more than happy to keep you on our list of potential education abroad student assistants. Join our Education Abroad Alumni Association. It is a student org. It doesn't require any fees. It's something you can add to your resume. We work on resume events. We would do campus-wide events, and we're hoping to do even more next year. So definitely join the Alumni Association. We'd be more than happy to have you. There's a Lessons from Abroad conference once you get back from your study abroad experience, where you can actually present at that conference on the lessons you have learned from abroad. So if you're interested in presenting or even just attending a conference while you're in an undergrad or a graduate student even, we'd be more than happy to have you. It's a great resume builder and a good experience. You can get graduation stoles from the UA Soup store that have your flag or country specific flag, has a country specific flag on the graduation stole, and you can order those at the UA Soup store. All right, so these are more questions for our student assistants, but I'm just going to give you their answers that they have answered previously in the past. What is something you wish you had known before traveling abroad? And typically things they wish they had known were to plan better and to budget better. Normally most of their answers are around budgeting. So making the most of their time by preparing as much as possible. So definitely do that research and make note of it. Something that you hack that you wish you hadn't or didn't use. I'm trying to think back to what they answered. I can give you mine. Mine was many clothes and shoes that I didn't use. I would have like a rule of thumb, don't pack more than like 3 pairs of shoes. Another thing was I thought I needed a bunch of like medicine and I couldn't buy medicine abroad, and you can totally buy medicine abroad. So definitely overpacked on things like that. I didn't want to get sick while I was abroad. I didn't want to miss a moment of time where I could be having fun. So just making sure that you can still buy things abroad. Something you regret not doing now that you have returned. One of the things I definitely think I regret not doing is spending a little more time like by myself or journaling. So just having that reflective opportunity. I definitely hung out with my friends a lot. And don't get me wrong, they're definitely forever friends, but having that moment to really reflect on what I'm learning through my study abroad experience and what I'm getting out of it. If I had been a little more intentional with that while I was abroad, I think I would have appreciated past me more if I had done that. One of the regrets that David always mentions is he wishes he budgeted. So that's one of his biggest things. He's like, I blew through a whole semester's of budget in like a month. So he highly, highly recommends it. He ended up getting a student job because of it, but definitely highly encourage y'all to budget as much as possible. Best recommendation to prepare for study abroad. Reach out to other students who are planning to study abroad, and don't be afraid to jump in their DMs and say, hey, I'm also going to so-and-so location. What are you planning on doing for this? How's your packing going? I think I was really nervous about that, like talking to like complete strangers that I've never met before and just randomly talking to them. But that was really helpful because another student messaged me and had the guts to do that. And so I had like 6 people I knew virtually before I ever went abroad, and that was really helpful. One challenge or idea to aspire for while studying abroad. Definitely reflection. So being aware of what's happening and why it's happening and taking that time to reflect would be something to aspire to do.